Thank you very much, Tom. Hey, we're going to keep you practicing that because you're getting good. So want to welcome everybody to the 14th Tri-State Governors meeting here today. Especially want to welcome Governor Branstad and Governor Dugard to our great state of Nebraska. Thank you very much for attending. And Tom, thank you very much for the Chamber and everybody's help who helped put this together. This really is a neat event, and obviously this is my first time here, having just been elected and only about 9.5 months in office. But as I was reading about the history of this conference, it was really neat to see that, started back in 1988, the concepts that we have here now, where the Sioux land area is really working together with the 3 different states, the different cities, the different counties, to create a single economic development voice, if you will, was really pretty new. That was a kind of an innovative idea going back to 1988. Now, because we've lived with it so long, we take it for granted. But then, that was breaking ground. And so we really have a lot to owe to those first visionaries over 25 years ago who were thinking about how can we do a better job of growing this area and really creating a unified voice for Sioux land that could attract companies and grow those jobs and really create that economic sustainability that is so important for everything that we do. So if you think about what they did back then, this is a great tradition to continue on and develop those ideas as we go forward to see how we can continue to grow. And of course, as a newly elected governor, that is really my goal as well for the state of Nebraska, to grow our state. What can we do to create more and better paying jobs, keep our kids and grandkids here, and attract people from around the country to come here and make Nebraska, and of course now we're talking about the Sioux land area as well, their home. And in my administration, we're focusing on 3 things to be able to do that. We're working on becoming more competitive when it comes to taxes, and we had great success in this last session. We cut the growth of government nearly in half. In the last budget, we grew government at 6.5%, and in the budget we just started, it's 3.5%. Because we were able to do that, we were able to increase our property tax credit relief fund by over 45%. That's direct relief from the state to all property owners in the state, and we will deliver $408 million in direct property tax relief in this budget. Now, the way that we get sustainable tax relief is similar to what you all have to do in your businesses. Control the growth of expenses and allow revenues to continue to grow. And that's where I bring my private sector experience to how we run government to be able to do that. We're applying those best business practices to being able to do a better job of delivering our services and bring our costs down at the same time. A concept that sometimes gets lost in government when you talk about controlling expenses. Sometimes people confuse that to say, well, you're going to cut your services. Of course, you all know in the private sector that if you told your customers, hey, I'm going to reduce your costs by cutting your services, they go to one of your other competitors. Nobody's going to do that to Nebraska. That's why we have to have that leadership in our agencies driving that mentality. So just to hit on some of the highlights that we're doing in the state of Nebraska right now to do a better job, with the help of the community, we were able to hire an executive search firm to find key people from across the country. We did a nationwide job search for positions such as the Department of Roads, Department of Health and Human Services, Corrections. And while we recently had to let our economic development person go, that same search firm is helping us with the new round of candidates coming in. We've hired a chief executive officer, or a chief operating officer rather, to help put in some new things that we haven't had before in our agencies, such as just measurements. We're bringing new things such as job descriptions and annual reviews to hold agency heads accountable. And again, those measurements and process improvement to do a better job in our agencies and hold them accountable for how they deliver their services. Some of the ways that that's manifesting itself is, for instance, in our Department of Roads. Our new Director of Roads, Kyle Schneeweiss, working with the Federal Highway Administration, streamlined our processes and has found $3 million in savings, which we're returning back to counties and cities of first class, like South Sioux, in the form of savings. So, for instance, South Sioux City will get an additional $26,000 back to it through this program. And while we know $3 million is not going to solve everybody's problems across our state, it is an indication of how we are doing a better job in our Department of Roads, and we'll be doing more of that on how we get creative with building roads and financing roads as we go forward into the future. Health and Human Services. We are publishing monthly how long people wait on hold to access Nebraska, which is how people apply for Medicaid. Doing a better job of managing ourselves so we can streamline that process. When it comes to, for instance, SNAP applications, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, food stamps, we have gone from being number 48th at the beginning of the year to number 39th. Now, nobody's proud of being number 39, but it is an indication, again, of how we're doing a better job of delivering our services. And most recently this week, we announced with our new CIO, our Chief Information Officer, who, again, came to us from the private sector, that we have found $5.3 million in savings by consolidating our servers at the state, bringing about 90 of our counties into 2 servers that are going to be managed by the state, and by consolidating some of our licenses. So, for instance, just a quick story on this. I was talking to our CIO, and he had been reviewing a help desk software that our Department of Roads wanted. And our CIO looked at it and said, hey, this is a great piece of software, but we already have 4 enterprise-wide licenses already. We don't need number 5, and in fact, we didn't need number 2 through 4. We can do that with 1 enterprise license. Now, that's not a problem unique to state government. That happens in all large organizations. But by managing that, we can do a better job of delivering our services and bringing our costs down. In this case, saving the state of Nebraska $5.3 million, again, over the course of those contracts. Now, again, that's just a start. We've got a lot more work to do to make those processes more efficient. But ultimately, that's how we get that sustainable tax relief. We also have to cut the regulatory red tape. And in this case, that system of measurement works for that as well. In our Department of Environmental Quality, for instance, just by measuring how long it takes us to be able to issue a permit, we've seen that time to issue the permit come down. Why? Because people know we're paying attention. We care. You get what you measure. And so that's how we're doing a better job of cutting that regulatory overhead. We're also pushing back on the federal government. We've taken them to court with the waters of the U.S., and in fact, a judge in North Dakota agreed with us that we'd be irreparably harmed if that regulation went forward, and they issued us a stay, and another judge issued a stay for not only those 13 states that were part of that lawsuit, but for the entire nation. That's also important because judges don't like to do that. They don't like to issue those stays unless they think you've got a great chance of winning. So we think we're going to be very successful in our pursuit of that Waters of the U.S. case against the EPA. We're also going to be suing the EPA under the Clean Power Plan for just the same reason. They're trying to use rules that, in a way that they were not designed for. They were using it inappropriately. And again, as a public power state, we're very defensive of our ratepayers. And the Clean Power Plan, where the EPA has wanted us to cut our carbon emissions by 40%, we are the state being the most dramatically impacted by this. It would drive up our utility rates anywhere between 12 and 35%. And again, the rules they're using are wrong, the outcome is terrible, and so we're fighting the EPA on that. The other opportunities we've had to push back on the federal government include working with the state of Iowa. I had a chance with your Lieutenant Governor, Governor Branstad, as you well know, to talk about the renewable fuel standard and how the EPA was cutting billions of gallons out of that, essentially pulling the rug from underneath our ethanol producers and our farmers by changing the rules of the game. And so we're pushing back to really ask for a more robust renewable fuel standard when it comes to that. The third area that we need to focus on is improving education. And we're going to talk about workforce development later, so I'm not really going to hit upon that so much in my remarks. But obviously, making sure we've got the right trained, skilled workforce is critical for us being able to expand and helping companies to find the people they need to be able to grow their companies in our states. And then one of the areas where, again, I think that we all have a common interest is expanding exports. If you look at our opportunities to grow those help by getting that foreign investment in our states and by being able to export more of our products. For instance, I was just over in Japan and China. Japan is actually the #1 largest foreign direct investor in Nebraska. Over the course of the last, just since 2010, they've invested $4.4 billion in Nebraska. And companies like Kawasaki have had a relationship in Nebraska for over 40 years, creating 2,000 jobs in Lincoln. Japan also takes about 20% of our beef exports and about 50% of our pork exports. So again, a great opportunity as Japanese diets change and they want more meat in their diet for us to be able to expand our exports. And of course, that's something that can benefit not only Nebraska, but Iowa, South Dakota. And I think this Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, that we're making great progress on is going to be huge for being able to expand our exports. All those things together will help us put together the plans and help us things we're doing right now in my administration to grow Nebraska. And that's where I look forward to continuing to work with you as you talk about your proposals for economic development in the Siouxland area. It is the local people that are going to know best about how they can expand their local areas. We at the state can provide a lot of resources and support, and we will. But the folks that are in this room today are going to know best about how to solve the problems in the Siouxland area. So again, I congratulate you all for coming together, for continuing that great legacy, heritage that was started over 25 years ago by bringing together all the interested parties in the Siouxland area to create this economic powerhouse, this economic development voice that can help grow jobs in Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota. And notice I put Nebraska first. Christy was very politically correct when she started off her remarks by saying Iowa first, because alphabetical order, that goes first. But I'm the governor of Nebraska. I think I get to say Nebraska first. So thank you all again for being here today, for talking about these important issues. You are the ones who are going to know best how to solve these problems. We will be a great partner for you. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.